Hello. Early start. Even though the ads are running. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Hello. Hello Kitty. Thank you for subscribing with your Prime. I have had a... oh, yes, also hello. Hello friends. Hello VOD watchers. Hope you're all well. I've had a interesting day. It's... yeah, I met up with a friend for breakfast this morning. That was pretty good. And they were filming. Looked like they were filming a TV show near the cafe where we had breakfast. So that was interesting. Yeah, look, you could see the extras were just like standing there, and then all of a sudden everyone just started to move at once. Hello, Forrest. How you doing? Hope you're well. And yes, ads are over. Good. Yes, then later on, no, they weren't filming the cafe. That's all right. It's hot again. It was warm actually here today, which was surprised me. Yeah, at lunchtime I went and dropped Dad off to his psychiatrist appointment, and when I went back to pick him up, a dog ran out in front of the car and I nearly hit the damn thing. So that scared the shit out of me, because the dog's owner was standing on the other side of the street, and the owner was waiting for me to drive past to cross the road. But then obviously the dog got excited to see its owner and ran out, and I just slammed on the brakes, and thankfully the dog wasn't stupid enough to run in front of the car. But yeah, that that was a bit of a shock. So yeah. And also went grocery shopping as well. So I had a bit of a busy day. But yeah. Why did a shark cross the road? He wanted to hug Salty. Thank you, Forrest. But yeah, I'm just glad that the dog didn't get hit. Fortunately, I'd just come around the corner and was accelerating, so yeah, I wasn't at full speed or anything, so thankfully I was able to just slam on the brakes, and I drove a Camry, so it's pretty good car. Yes, aside from that, what else did I want to yes, I've been uploading a few videos to YouTube. I've got 5 up there at the moment. Toyota, yeah. I have a Toyota Camry. It's a very good car. It's very comfy. It could do with some maintenance. But yes, it's fine. I just need to check the. I think I might check the brake pads after that. Yes, and we have a new book. It is the 3rd book in the series. Brilliance of the Moon by Leon Hearn. Leon Hearn lives in Australia and has done her whole life. Well, most of her life. It is purple. Yes, it is purple. It's very purple. Even the writing's purple. For some reason, the writing isn't worn like the other 2. Maybe I just took better care of it, or maybe it just survived better. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's the printing has improved. I don't know. But it's very pretty. You can tell the theme by the cover is going to be a little more. I'm assuming that's K-Dare on the back. It's so pretty. Look at the shiny. Have you ever seen many? You don't see many books with like shiny. It's so pretty. And yes, it's definitely I think the cover definitely added to the sales of this book series. Now there is a prequel and a sequel book. I will probably read those, and I'm reading them in the order they were published, not in the order they're set, because the prequels require knowledge of the 3 books. Precious. So I will read them in the order they were published. So yeah. Where is my link? Give me that link. There it is. Is that it? Pedro. Right, there you go. There's my YouTube. So I've uploaded 5 and I've got more to go. Also, if in those YouTube videos, Kitty and anyone else who's watching them, if you notice anything that you think, I wonder if Salty meant to put that up. Like if you think that there's something in there I should get rid of that's in the video, by all means let me know, because I haven't watched those through. So I've just watched the start and the end, and maybe the middle bit if there's like a break. Strawberries, yes please. Send strawberries. Do I have a nom? That'll do. Do you know how to beatbox? I do not. No. Sorry. But welcome in, Al. I don't know. I'm going to call you Al King. There you go. Okay, so I'm just going to take the dust cover off because, oddly enough, the dust cover is something to preserve. And it's purple. it's purple underneath as well. Oh, that's what I wanted to do. I was going through grandmother's things last week, packing stuff up, and I found this old book, I suppose. It's like a notepad that it turns out my mum gave to Grandma. Oh, Kitty. Mum gave to Grandma in Christmas 2013. And she's written on the... So I discovered my mother's handwriting there. Says, Happy Christmas, Jean. This may keep track of your many social engagements in 2014. Have a great year. And I'm just like, may help you keep track of your many social engagements in 2014. I'm just like, was that sass? Like with my mum being sassy to Grandma? Venomous butter uncle. Anyway, I just thought that was something interesting. Because my mum, you could never tell if my mum was actually sassing you or not. It was like her own private joke. So you never knew. Anyway, so this book is called Brilliance of the Moon. Book 3, Tales of the Otori. And there's a little poem in the front of the book. Others, too, in far-flung villages, will no doubt be gazing at this moon that never asks which watcher claims the night. Loud on the unseen mountain wind, a stag's cry quivers in the heart, and somewhere a twig lets one leaf fall. The Falling Block, Kinuta by Ziami. Japanese Noh dramas by Penguin Books. And I will read the foreword. These events took place in the months following the marriage of Otori Takeo and Shirokawa Keide at the temple at Terayama. They got married. This marriage strengthened Keide's resolve to inherit the domain of Maruyama and gave Takeo the resources he needed to carry out his work of revenge for his adopted father Shigeru and take his place as the head of the Otori clan. However, it also enraged Arai Daichi, the warlord who now controlled most of the 3 countries, and insulted the nobleman Lord Fujiwara, who considered Keide betrothed to him. The previous winter, Takeo, under the tribe's sentence of death, had fled to Terayama, where the detailed records of the tribe that Shigeru had compiled were given to him, along with the Otori sword, Jato. On the way, his life was saved by the outcast Jo-an, one of the forbidden sect, the Hidden, who took him to a mountain shrine to hear the prophetic words of a holy woman. 3 bloods are mixed in you. You were born into the hidden, but your life has been brought into the open, and is no longer your own. Earth will deliver what heaven desires. Your lands will stretch from sea to sea, but peace comes at the price of bloodshed. 5 battles will buy you peace, 4 to win and 1 to lose. Alrighty. So ominous. It is ominous. Okay. Chapter 1. The feather lay in my palm. I held it carefully, aware of its age and its fragility. Yet its whiteness was still translucent, the vermilion tips of the pinions still brilliant. It came from a sacred bird, the ho-ho. Oh my goodness. Hoyo. We're only 1 sentence in and I'm already stuck. That. Hoyo. We're going with that. It's a bird. Matsura Shingen the abbot of the temple at Teriyama told me. It appeared to your adopted father, Shigeru, when he was only 15, younger than you are now. Did he ever tell you this, Takeo? I shook my head. Matsuda and I were standing in his room, at one end of the cloister around the main courtyard of the temple. From outside, drowning out the usual sounds of the temple, the chanting and the bells, came the urgent noise of preparations, of many people coming and going. I could hear Keide, my wife, beyond the gates, talking to Amano Tenzo about the problems of keeping our army fed on the march. We were preparing to travel to Maruyama, the great domain in the west to which Keide was the rightful heir, to claim it in her name, to fight for it if necessary. Since the end of winter, warriors had been making their way to Teriyama to join me, and I now had close to 1,000 men, billeted in the temple and in the surrounding villages, not counting the district's farmers, who also strongly supported my cause. Amano was from Shirakawa, my wife's ancestral home, and the most trusted of her retainers, a great horseman and good with all animals. In the days that followed our marriage, Keide and her woman, Manami, had shown considerable skill in handling and distributing food and equipment. They discussed everything with Amano and had him deliver their decisions to the men. That morning he was enumerating the ox carts and pack horses we had at our disposal. I tried to stop listening, to concentrate on what Matsuda was telling me, but I was restless, eager to get moving. Be patient, Matsuda said mildly. This will only take a minute. What do you know about the Hoyo? I reluctantly pulled my attention back to the feather in my palm, and tried to recall what my former teacher, Ichiro, had taught me when I had been living in Lord Shigeru's house in Hagi. It is the sacred bird of legend that appears in times of justice and peace, and it is written with the same character as the name of my clan, Otori. Correct, Matsuda said, smiling. It does not often appear. Justice and peace being something of a rarity in these times. But Shigeru saw it, and I believe the vision inspired him in his pursuit of these virtues. I told him then that the feathers were tinged with blood, and indeed his blood, his death, still drive both you and me. I looked more closely at the feather. It lay across the scar on my right palm, where I had burned my hand a long time ago, in Mino, my birthplace, the day Shigeru had saved my life. My hand was also marked with the straight line of the Kikuta, the tribe family to which I belonged, from which I had run away the previous winter. It said like ho, ho, and means pope. Okay, well in this story it means sacred bird. Yes, it is very difficult to pronounce. My inheritance, my past, and my future all seem to be there, held in the palm of my hand. Why do you show it to me now? You will be leaving here soon. Soon. You have been with us all winter, studying and training to prepare yourself to fulfill Shigeru's last commands to you. I wanted you to share in his vision, to remember that his goal was justice, and yours must be, too. I will never forget it, I promised. I bowed reverently over the feather, holding it gently in both hands, and offered it back to the abbot. He took it, bowed over it, and replaced it in the small lacquered box from which he had taken it. I said nothing, remembering all that Shigeru had done for me, and how much I still needed to accomplish for him. Ichiro told me about the hall when he was teaching me to write my name, I said finally. When I saw him in Hagi last year, he advised me to wait for him here, but I cannot wait much longer. We must leave for Maruyama within the week. I had been worrying about my old teacher since the snows had melted, for I knew that the Otori lords, Shigeru's uncles, were trying to take possession of my house and lands in Hagi, and that Ichiro continued stubbornly to resist them. I did not know it, but Ichiro was already dead. I had news of it the next day. I was talking with Amano in the courtyard when I heard something from far below. Shouts of anger, running feet, the trampling of hooves. The sound of horses plunging up the slope was unexpected and shocking. Usually, no one came to the temple at Terayama on horseback. They either walked up the steep mountain path or, if unfit or very old, were carried by sturdy porters. A few seconds later, Amano heard it too. By then, I was already running to the temple gates, calling to the guards. Swiftly, they set about closing the gates and barring them. Matsuda came hurrying across the courtyard. He was not wearing armor, but his sword was in his belt. Before we could speak to each other, a challenge came from the guardhouse. Who dares to ride to the temple gate, dismount, and approach this place of peace with respect? It was Kubo Makoto's voice, one of Terayama's young warrior monks. He had become, over the last few months, my closest friend. I ran to the wooden stockade and climbed the ladder to the guardhouse. Makoto gestured towards the spy hole. Through the chinks in the wood, I could see 4 horsemen. They had been galloping up the hill. Now they pulled their heaving, snorting mounts to a halt. They were fully armed, but the Otori crest was clearly visible on their helmets. For a moment, I thought that they might be messengers from Ichiro. Then my eyes fell on the basket tied to the bow of one of the saddles, or bow of one of the saddles. My heart turned to stone. I could guess only too easily what was inside such a container. The horses were rearing and cavorting not only from the exertion of the gallop, but also from alarm. 2 of them were already bleeding from wounds to their hindquarters. A mob of angry men poured from the narrow path, armed with staves and sickles. I recognized some of them. They were farmers from the nearest village. The warrior at the rear made a rush at them, sword flailing, and they fell back slightly but did not disperse, maintaining their threatening stance in a tight half-circle. The leader of the horsemen flung a look of contempt at them, and then called towards the gate in a loud voice. I am Fuwa Dosan, of the Otori clan from Hagi. I bring a message from my lords, Shoichi and Masahiro, for the upstart who calls himself Otori Takeo. Makoto called back. If you are peaceful messengers, dismount and leave your swords. The gates will be opened. I already knew what their message would be. I could feel blind fury building up behind my eyes. There's no need for that, Fuwa replied scornfully. Our message is short. Tell the so-called Takeo that the Otori do not recognize his claims, and that this is how they will deal with him and any who follow him. The man alongside him dropped the reins on his horse's neck and opened the container. From it, he took what I dreaded to see. Holding it by its top knot, he swung his arm and threw Ichiro's head over the wall into the temple grounds. It fell with a slight thud onto the petalled grass of the garden. I drew my sword, Chateau, from my belt. Basically. Open the gate, I shouted. I am going out to them. I leapt down the steps, Makoto behind me. As the gates opened, the Otori warriors turned their horses and drove them at the wall of men around them, swords sweeping. I imagined they thought the farmers would not dare attack them. Even I was astonished at what happened next. Instead of parting to let them through, the men on foot hurled themselves at the horses. 2 of the farmers died immediately, cut in half by the warriors' swords, but then the first horse came down, and its rider fell into the pack around him. The others met a similar fate. They had no chance to use their swordsmanship. They were dragged from their horses and beaten to death like dogs. Don't beat dogs. Makoto and I tried to restrain the farmers, and eventually managed to drive them back from the bodies. We restored calm only by severing the warriors' heads and having them displayed on the temple gates. Why would you do that to a dog? Yeah, exactly. I know it's just a phrase, but still. The unruly army threw insults at them for a while, and then retired downhill, promising in loud voices that if any other strangers dared approach the temple and insult Lord Otori Takeo, the angel of Yamagata, they would be dealt with in the same way. Makoto was shaking with rage, and some other emotion that he wanted to talk to me about, but I did not have the time then. I went back inside the walls. Kade had brought white cloths and water in a wooden bowl. She was kneeling on the ground, beneath the cherry trees, calmly washing the head. Its skin was blue-grey, the eyes half closed, the neck not severed cleanly but hacked with several blows. Yet she handled it gently, with loving care, as if it were a precious and beautiful object. I knelt beside her, put out my hand and touched the hair. It was streaked with grey, but the face in death looked younger than when I had last seen it, when Ichiro was alive in the house in Hagi, grieving and haunted by ghosts, yet still willing to show me affection and guidance. She is kind. Who is it? Kade said in a low voice. Ichiro. He was my teacher in Hagi. Shigeru's too. My heart was too full to speak further. I blinked away my tears. The memory of our last meeting rose in my mind. I wished I had said more to him, told him of my gratitude and my respect. I wondered how he had died, if his death had been humiliating and agonizing. I longed for the dead eyes to open, the bloodless lips to speak. How irretrievable the dead are, how completely they go from us. Even when their spirits return, they do not speak of their own deaths. I was born and raised among the hidden, who believe that only those who follow the commandments of the secret God will meet again in the afterlife. Everyone else will be consumed in the fires of hell. I did not know if my adopted father Shigeru had been a believer, but he was familiar with all the teachings of the hidden and spoke their prayers at the moment of his death, along with the name of the Enlightened One. Ichiro, his advisor and the steward of his household, had never given any such sign, in fact, rather the opposite. Ichiro had suspected from the start that Shigeru had rescued me from the warlord Aida Sadamu's persecution of the hidden, and had watched me like a cormorant for anything that might give me away. But I no longer followed the teachings of my childhood, and I could not believe that a man of Ichiro's integrity and loyalty was in hell. Far stronger was my outrage at the injustice of this murder, and my realization that I now had another death to avenge. They paid for it with their lives, Kader said. Why kill an old man and go to all that trouble to bring his head to you? She washed away the last traces of blood and wrapped a clean white cloth around the head. I imagine the Otori lords want to draw me out, I replied. They would prefer not to attack Teriyama. They will run into Arai's soldiers if they do. They must hope to entice me over the border and meet me there. I longed for such a meeting, to punish them once and for all. The warriors' deaths had temporarily assuaged my fury, but I could feel it simmering in my heart. However, I had to be patient. My strategy was first to withdraw to Maruyama and build up my forces there. I would not be dissuaded from that. I touched my brow to the grass, bidding my teacher goodbye. Manami came from the guest rooms and knelt a little way behind us. I've brought a box, lady, she whispered. Give it to me, Kader replied. It was a small container, woven from willow twigs and strips of red-dyed leather. She took it and opened it. The smell of aloes rose from it. She put the white wrapped bundle inside and arranged the aloes round it. Then she placed the box on the ground in front of her, and the three of us bowed again before it. A bush warbler called its spring song, and a cuckoo responded from deep in the forest, the first I had heard that year. We held the funeral rites the following day and buried the head next to Shigeru's grave. I made arrangements for another stone to be erected for Ichiro. I longed to know what had happened to the old woman, Chiyo, and the rest of the household at Hagi. I was tormented by the thought that the house no longer existed, that it would have been burned. The tea room, the upper room where we had so often sat looking out onto the garden, the nightingale floor, all destroyed, their songs silenced forever. I wanted to rush to Hagi to claim my inheritance before it was taken from me. But I knew this was exactly what the Otori hoped I would do. 5 farmers died outright, and 2 died later from their wounds. We buried them in the temple graveyard. 2 of the horses were badly hurt, and Amano had them killed mercifully, but the other 2 were unharmed. One I liked in particular, a handsome black stallion that reminded me of Shigeru's horse, Q, and could have been its half-brother. At Makoto's insistence, we buried the Otori warriors with full rites too, praying that their ghosts, outraged at their ignoble deaths, would not linger to haunt us. That evening the abbot came to the guest room, and we talked until late into the night. Makoto and Miyoshi Kahei, one of my allies and friends from Hagi, were also with us. Kahei's younger brother, Gemba, had been sent ahead to Maruyama to tell the domain's senior retainer, Sugita Haruki, of our imminent departure. Sugita had assured Keide the previous winter of his support for her claim. Keide did not stay with us for various reasons. She and Makoto were not at ease in each other's presence, and she avoided him as much as possible. But I told her beforehand to sit behind the screen so she could hear what was said. I wanted to know her opinion afterwards. In the short time since our marriage, I had come to talk to her as I had never talked to anyone in my life. I had been silent for so long, it seemed now I could not get enough of sharing my thoughts with her. I relied on her judgment and her wisdom. So, now you are at war, the abbot said, and your army has had its first skirmish. Hardly an army, Makoto said, a rabble of farmers. How are you going to punish them? What do you mean? I replied. Farmers are not supposed to kill warriors, he said. Anyone else in your situation would punish them with the utmost cruelty. They would be crucified, boiled in oil, flayed alive. They will be if the Otori get hold of them, Kahei muttered. They were fighting on my behalf, I said. Privately, I thought the warriors had deserved their shameful end, though I was sorry I had not killed them all myself. Yeah, I know, right, Kitty? I'm not going to punish them. I'm more concerned with how to protect them. You have let an ogre out, Makoto said. Let's hope you can contain it. The abbot smiled into his wine cup. Quite apart from his earlier comments on justice, he had been teaching me strategy all winter, and, having heard my theories on the capture of Yamagata and other campaigns, knew how I felt about my farmers. The Otori seek to draw me out, I said to him, as I had said earlier to Keide. Yes, you must resist the temptation, he replied. Naturally, your first instinct is for revenge, but even if you defeated their army in a confrontation, they would simply retreat to Hagi. A long siege would be a disaster. The city is virtually impregnable, and sooner or later you would have to deal with Arai's forces at your rear. Arai Daichi was the warlord from Kumamoto who had taken advantage of the overthrow of the Tohan to seize control of the 3 countries. I had enraged him by disappearing with the tribe the previous year, and now my marriage to Keide would certainly enrage him further. He had a huge army, and I did not want to be confronted by it before I had strengthened my own. Then we must go first to Mariama as planned. But if I leave the temple unprotected, you and the people of the district may be punished by the Autori. We can bring many people within the walls, the abbot said. I think we have enough arms and supplies to hold off the Autori if they do attack. Personally, I don't think they will. Arai and his allies will not relinquish Yamagata without a long struggle, and many among the Autori would be reluctant to destroy this place, which is sacred to the clan. Anyway, they will be more concerned with pursuing you. He paused and then went on. You can't fight a war without being prepared for sacrifice. Men will die in the battles you fight, and if you lose, many of them, including you yourself, may be put to death very painfully. The Autori do not recognize your adoption. They do not know your ancestry. As far as they are concerned, you are an upstart, not one of their class. You cannot hold back from action because people will die as a result. Even your farmers know that. 7 of them died today, but those who survived are not sad. They are celebrating their victory over those who insulted you. I know that, I said, glancing at Makoto. His lips were pressed together tightly, and though his face showed no other expression, I felt his disapproval. I was aware, yet again, of my weaknesses as a commander. I was afraid both Makoto and Kahei, brought up in the warrior tradition, would come to despise me. We joined you by our own choice, Takeo, the abbot went on. Because of our loyalty to Shigeru, and because we believe your cause is just. I bowed my head, accepting the rebuke, and vowing he would never have to speak to me in that vein again. We will leave for Maruyama the day after tomorrow. Makoto will go with you, the abbot said. As you know, he has made your cause his own. Makoto's lips curved slightly as he nodded in agreement. Later that night, around the second half of the Hour of the Rat, when I was about to lie down beside Keide, I heard voices outside, and a few moments later, Minami called quietly to us to say that a monk had come with a message from the guardhouse. We have taken a prisoner, he said when I went to speak to him. He was spotted skulking in the bushes beyond the gate. The guards pursued him and would have killed him on the spot, but he called your name and said he was your man. I'll come and talk to him, I said, taking up Jato, suspecting it could only be the outcast Joanne. Joanne had seen me at Yamagata when I had released his brother and other members of the Hidden into death. It was he who had given me the name of the Angel of Yamagata. Then he had saved my life on my desperate journey to Terayama in the winter. I had told him I would send for him in the spring, and that he should wait until he heard from me. But he acted in unpredictable ways, usually in response to what he claimed was the voice of the secret god. It was a soft, warm night, the air already holding summer's humidity. In the cedars, an owl was hooting. Hoot hoot. Joanne lay on the ground just inside the gate, He'd been trussed up roughly. His legs were bent under him, his hands bound behind his back. His face was streaked with dirt and blood, his hair matted. He was moving his lips very slightly, praying soundlessly. 2 monks were watching him from a careful distance, their faces twisted in contempt. I called his name and his eyes opened. I saw relief shine in them. He tried to scrabble into a kneeling position and fell forward, unable to save himself with his hands. His face hit the dirt. "Untie him," I said. One of the monks said, "He is an outcast. We should not touch him." "Who tied him up?" "We did not realize then," the other said. "You can cleanse yourselves later. This man saved my life. Untie him." Reluctantly they went to Joanne, lifted him up, and loosened the cords that bound him. He crawled forward and prostrated himself at my feet. "Sit up, Joanne," I said. "Why are you here?" "I said you were to come when I sent for you. You were lucky not to be killed, turning up here without warning, without permission." The last time I'd seen him, I'd been almost as shabbily dressed as he was, a fugitive, exhausted and starving. Now I was aware of the robe I wore, my hair dressed in the warrior style, the sword in my belt. I knew the sight of me talking to the outcast would shock the monks profoundly. Part of me was tempted to have him thrown out, to deny that there was any relationship between us, and to throw him from my life at the same time. If I so ordered the guards, they would kill him immediately, with no second thought. Yet I could not do it. He had saved my life. Moreover, for the sake of the bond between us, both born into the hidden, I had to treat him not as an outcast, but as a man. "No one will kill me until the secret one calls me home," he muttered, raising his eyes and looking at me. "Until that time, my life is yours." There was a little light where we stood, just the lamp the monk had brought from the guardhouse and placed on the ground near us, but I could see Joanne's eyes burning. I wondered, as I often had before, if he were not alive at all, but a visitant from another world. "What do you want?" I said. "I have something to tell you. Very important. You'll be glad I came." The monks had stepped back out of pollution's way, but were still close enough to hear us. "I need to talk to this man," I said. "Where should we go?" They threw an anguished look at each other, and the older man suggested, "Maybe the pavilion in the garden?" "You don't need to come with me." "We should guard Lord Otori," the younger said. "I'm in no danger from this man. Leave us alone, but tell Manami to bring water, some food and tea." They bowed and left. As they crossed the courtyard, they started whispering to each other. I could hear every word. I sighed. "Come with me," I said to Joanne. He limped after me to the pavilion, which stood in the garden not far from the large pool. Its surface glittered in the starlight, and every now and then a fish leapt from the water, flopping back with a loud splash. Beyond the pool, the greyish-white stones of the graves loomed out of the darkness, The owl hooted again, closer this time. God told me to come to you, he said when we were settled on the wooden floor of the pavilion. You should not talk so openly of God, I chided him. You are in a temple. The monks have no more love for the hidden than the warriors. You are here, he muttered. You are our hope and our protection. I'm just one person. I can't protect all of you from the way a whole country feels. He was silent for a moment or two. Then he said, The secret one thinks about you all the time, even if you have forgotten him. I did not want to listen to this sort of message. What do you have to tell me? I said impatiently. The men you saw last year, the charcoal burners, were taking their god back to the mountain. I met them on the path. They told me the Autori armies are out, watching every road around Teriyama and Yamagata. I went to look for myself. There are soldiers hidden everywhere. They will ambush you as soon as you leave. If you want to get out, you will have to fight your way through them. His eyes were fixed on me, watching my reaction. I was cursing myself for having stayed so long at the temple. I had been aware all along that speed and surprise were my main weapons. I should have left days before. I had been putting off leaving, waiting for Ichiro. Before my marriage, I'd gone out night after night to check the roads around the temple for just such an eventuality. But since Keide had joined me, I could not tear myself away from her. Now I was trapped by my own vacillation and lack of vigilance. How many men would you say? 5,000 or 6,000, he replied. I had barely 1,000. So you'll have to go over the mountain, as you did in the winter. There's a track that goes west. No one's watching it because there's still snow on the pass. My mind was racing. I knew the path he meant. It went past the shrine where Makoto had planned to spend the winter before I stumbled in out of the snow on my flight to Teriyama. I'd explored it myself a few weeks earlier, turning back when the snow became too deep to wade through. I thought of my forces, men, horses, oxen. Oxen would never make it, but men and horses might. I would send them at night, if possible, so the Autori would think we were still in the temple. I would have to start at once, consult the abbot immediately. My thoughts were interrupted by Minami and one of the manservants. The man was carrying a bowl of water. Minami brought a tray with a bowl of rice and vegetables and 2 cups of twig tea. Cheers. She set the tray down on the floor, gazing at Joanne with as much revulsion as if he were a viper. The man's reaction was equally horrified. I wondered briefly whether it would harm me to be seen associating with outcasts. I told them to leave us, and they did so quickly, though I could hear Minami's disapproving muttering all the way back to the guest house. Joanne washed his hands and face, then joined his hands together to say the first prayer of the hidden. Even as I found myself responding to the familiar words, a wave of irritation swept over me. He had risked his own life again to bring me this vital news, but I wished he showed more discretion, and my spirits sank at the thought of the liability he might become. When he had finished eating, I said, "You'd better leave. You have a long journey home." He made no response, but sat, head turned slightly sideways, in the listening position I was by now familiar with. "No," he said finally, "I am to go with you." "It's impossible. I don't want you with me." "God wants it," he said. There was nothing I could do to argue him out of it, short of killing him or imprisoning him, and these seemed shabby rewards for his help to me. "Very well," I said, "but you can't stay in the temple." "No," he agreed docilely. "I have to fetch the others." "What others, Joanne?" "The rest of us, the ones who came with me. You saw some of them." I had seen these men at the tannery by the river where Joanne worked, and I would never forget the way they had stared after me with burning eyes. I knew they looked to me for justice and protection. I remembered the feather. Justice was what Shigeru had desired. I also had to pursue it for the sake of his memory and for these living men. Joanne put his hands together again and gave thanks for the food. A fish leapt in the silence. "How many are there?" I asked. "About 30. They're hiding in the mountains. They've been crossing the border in ones or twos for the last weeks." "Isn't the border guarded?" "There have been skirmishes between the Autori and Arise men. At the moment there's a standoff. The borders are all open. The Autori have made it clear they're not challenging Arai or hoping to retake Yamagata. They only want to eliminate you." It seemed to be everyone's mission. "Do the people support them?" I asked. "Of course not," he said, almost impatiently. "You know who they support, the Angel of Yamagata. So do we all. Why else are we here?" I was not sure I wanted their support, but I could not help but be impressed by their courage. "Hello, B. You're not lucid at all, lurking from bed as I roll around to Lucy. Oh no, B, you had a hard time. You need rest. You need to get back to night shift." "Okay, you lie there, Petal, and enjoy." "Thank you," I said. He grinned then, showing his missing teeth, reminding me of the torture he had already suffered because of me. "We'll meet you on the other side of the mountain. You'll need us then. You'll see." "Night shift soon?" "Yeah." I had the guards open the gates and said goodbye to him. I watched his slight, twisted shape as he scuttled away into the darkness. From the forest, a vixen screamed, a sound like a ghost in torment. I shivered. Joanne seemed guided and sustained by some great supernatural power. Though I no longer believed in it, I feared its force like a superstitious child. I went back to the guest house, my skin crawling. I removed my clothes and, despite the lateness of the hour, told Manami to take them away, wash and purify them, and then come to the bathhouse. She scrubbed me all over, and I soaked in the hot water for 10 or 15 minutes. Putting on fresh clothes, I sent the servant to fetch Kahei, and then to ask the abbot if we might speak with him. It was the first half of the hour of the ox. I met Kahe in the passageway, told him briefly what had transpired, and went with him to the abbot's room, sending the servant to fetch Makoto from the temple, where he was keeping the night vigil. We came to the decision that we would move the entire army as soon as possible, apart from a small band of horsemen who would remain at Teriyama for a day to fight as a rear guard. Kahe and Makoto went immediately to the village beyond the gates to rouse Amano and the other men and start packing up food and equipment. The abbot ordered servants to inform the monks, reluctant to sound the temple bell at this hour of night in case we sent a warning to spies. I went to Keide. She was waiting for me, already in her sleeping robe, her hair loose down her back like a second robe, intensely black against the ivory material and her white skin. The sight of her, as always, took my breath away. Whatever happened to us, I would never forget this springtime we had had together. My life seemed full of undeserved blessings, but this was the greatest of them. Anami said an outcast came, and you let him in and spoke with him. Her voice was as shocked as her woman's had been. Yes, he's called Joan. I met him in Yamagata. I undressed, put on my robe, and sat opposite her, knee to knee. Her eyes searched my face. You look exhausted. Come and lie down. I will. We must try and sleep for a few hours. We march at first light. The Autori have surrounded the temple. We are going over the mountain. The outcast brought you this news. He risked his life to do so. Why? How do you know him? Do you remember the day we rode here with Lord Shigeru? I said. Keide smiled. I can never forget it. The night before I climbed into the castle and put an end to the suffering of the prisoners hanging on the walls. They were hidden. Have you heard of them? Keide nodded. Shizuka told me a little about them. They were tortured in the same way by the Noguchi. One of the men I killed was Joan's brother. Joan saw me as I came out of the moat and thought I was an angel. The angel of Yamagata, Keide said slowly. When we came back that night, the whole town was talking about it. Since then, we have met again. Our fates seem to be entwined in some way. Last year, he helped me get here. I would have perished in the snow but for him. On the way, he took me to see a holy woman, and she said certain things about my life. I had told no one, not even Makoto, not even Matsuda, of the words of the prophetess, but now I wanted to share them with Keide. I whispered some of them to her, that in me 3 bloods mingled. I was born into the hidden, but my life was no longer my own, that I was destined to rule in peace from sea to sea, when earth delivered what heaven desired. I had repeated these words over and over to myself, and, as I've said before, sometimes I believed them, and sometimes I did not. I told her that 5 battles would bring us peace, 4 to win and 1 to lose. But I did not tell her what the saint had predicted about my own son, that I would die at his hands. I told myself it was too terrible a burden to lay on her, but the truth was, I did not want to talk about another secret I had kept from her, that a girl from the tribe, Muto Kenji's daughter, Yuki, was carrying my child. "You were born into the hidden," she said carefully, "but the tribe claimed you because of your father's blood. Shizuka tried to explain it to me." Muto Kenji revealed that my father was Kikuta, from the tribe, when he first came to Shigeru's house. He did not know, though Shigeru did, that my father was also half Otori. I had already shown Keide the records that confirmed this. Shigeru's father, Otori Shigemori, was my grandfather. "And your mother?" she asked quietly, "if you feel able to tell me." My mother was one of the hidden. I was raised among them. My family were massacred in our village, Mino, by Aida's men, and they would have killed me then if Shigeru had not rescued me. I paused and then spoke of what I had hardly allowed myself to think about. I had 2 sisters, little girls. I imagined they were also murdered. They were 9 and 7 years old. "How terrible," Keide said. "I am always afraid for my sisters. I hope we can send for them when we arrive at Maruyama. I hope they are safe now." I was silent, thinking of Mino, where we had all felt so safe. "How strange your life has been," Keide went on. "When I first met you, I felt you hid everything. I watched you go away as if into a dark and secret place. I wanted to follow you there. I wanted to know everything about you. I will tell you everything, but let's lie down and rest." Keide pulled back the quilt, and we lay down on the mattress. I took her in my arms, loosening both our robes so I could feel her skin against mine. She called to Manami to put out the lamps. The smell of smoke and oil lingered in the room after the woman's footsteps had died away. I knew all the sounds of the temple at night by now. The periods of complete stillness, broken at regular intervals by the soft padding of feet as the monks rose in the darkness and went to pray. The low chanting, the sudden note of a bell. But tonight, that regular and harmonious rhythm was disturbed, with sounds of people coming and going all night. I was restless, feeling I should be part of the preparations, yet reluctant to leave Keide. She whispered, "What does it mean to be one of the hidden?" I was raised with certain beliefs. Most I don't hold anymore. As I said this, I felt my neck tingle, as if a cold breath had passed over me. Was it really true that I had abandoned the beliefs of my childhood, ones that my family had died for rather than give up? "It was said that when Aida punished Lord Shigeru, it was because he was one of the hidden, and my kinswoman, Lady Maruyama too," Keide murmured. "Shigeru never spoke of it to me. He knew their prayers and said some of them before he died, but his last word was the name of the enlightened one. Until today, I had hardly thought of this moment. It had been obliterated by the horror of what had followed, and by my overwhelming grief. Today I had thought of it twice, and suddenly, for the first time, I put together the prophetess's words and Shigeru's. "It is all one," she had said. So Shigeru had believed this too. I heard again her wandering laugh, and thought I saw him smile at me. I felt that something profound had suddenly been revealed to me, something I could never put into words. My heart seemed to miss a beat in astonishment. Into my silenced mind, several images rushed at once. Shigeru's composure when he was about to die, the prophetess's compassion, my own sense of wonder and anticipation the first day I had come to Terayama, the red-tipped feather of the Ho on my palm. I saw the truth that lay behind the teaching and the beliefs, saw how human striving muddied the clarity of life, saw with pity how we are all subject to desire and to death, the warrior as much as the outcast, the priest, the farmer, even the emperor himself. What name could I give to that clarity? Heaven? God? Fate? Or a myriad of names like the countless old spirits that men believed dwelled in this land? They were all faces of the faceless, expressions of that which cannot be expressed, parts of a truth, but never the whole truth. But never the whole truth. "And Lady Mariama?" Kaede said, surprised by my long silence. "I think she held strong beliefs, but I never spoke to her about them. When I first met her, she drew the sign on my hand." "Show me," Kaede whispered, and I took her hand and traced the sign on her palm. "Are the hidden dangerous? Why does everyone hate them?" "They're not dangerous. They are forbidden to take life, and so they do not defend themselves. They believe everyone is equal in the eyes of their God, and that he will judge everyone after death. Great lords like Aida hate this teaching. Most of the warrior class do. If everyone is equal, and God watches everything, it must be wrong to treat the people so badly. Our world would be overthrown from the ground up if everyone thought like the hidden." "And you believe this?" "I don't believe such a God exists, but I believe everyone should be treated as if they were equal. Outcasts, farmers, the hidden, should all be protected against the cruelty and greed of the warrior class. And I want to use anyone who is prepared to help me. I don't care if they're farmers or outcasts. I'll take them all into my armies." Kaede did not reply. I imagined these ideas seemed strange and repellent to her. I might no longer believe in the God of the hidden, but I could not help the way their teachings had formed me. I thought of the farmer's action against the Otori warriors at the temple gates. I had approved of that, for I saw them as equals, but Makoto had been shocked and outraged. Was he right? Was I unchaining an ogre that I could never hope to control? Kaede said quietly, "Do the hidden believe women are equal to men. In God's eyes they are. Usually the priests are men, but if there is no man of the right age, the older women become priestesses. Would you let me fight in your army? As skillful as you are, if you were any other woman, I would be glad to have you fight alongside me, as we did at Inuyama. But you are heir to Maruyama. If you were to be killed in battle, our cause would be completely lost. Besides, I could not bear it. I pulled Kaede close to me, burying my face in her hair. There was one other thing I had to speak to her about. It concerned another teaching of the hidden, one that the warrior class find incomprehensible. That it is forbidden to take your own life. I whispered, "We have been safe here. Once we leave, everything will be different. I hope we can stay together, but there will be times when we will be separated. Many people want me dead, but it will not be until the prophecy is fulfilled and our peaceful country stretches from sea to sea. I want you to promise me that whatever happens, whatever you are told, you will not believe I am dead until you see it with your own eyes. Promise you will not take your own life until you see me dead?" "I promise it," she said quietly, "and you must do the same." I made the same vow to her. When she was asleep, I lay in the dark and thought about what had been revealed to me. Whatever had been granted to me was not for my sake, but for the sake of what I might achieve. A country of peace and justice, where the whore would not only be seen, but would build its nest and raise its young. End of chapter 1. Just have a little tiny stretch. Yay! Aside from my backache, I don't know where that came from. I'm okay. I was of two minds tonight. I was because I, had a bit of a tiring day, so I was like, should I stream? It's like, yes, I enjoy streaming, and I enjoy reading. I'm gonna have to do some back exercises after stream. The proper ones that the physio tells you to do. Let me just have a little look at how big Cat Cow for the win. Cat Cow? I'm missing the connection there, kitty. Oh, child post planks, right. I don't know Cat Cow. I know child pose and planks for sure. It's definitely like the one where you go from plank to, then you like rock back to. Oh, is that Cat Cow? Is that what that's called? How? That can't be. That is a long chapter. We're probably going to get halfway through the next chapter. Yeah, on all fours you arch your back like a cat, then sad your belly like a cow. Oh, okay, the one she gave me was you do that, but then you. Yeah, you arch your back up, and then you go backwards and then crunch down into like child pose. That's one of them. And the other one was to lie on your back and rock your knees side to side gently. And just general things like that. Okay. Yeah, the knee rock really helps. Okay. Sometimes I touch my microphone, and sometimes I think about Ari's microphone, and I have this sudden urge to like clean Ari's microphone. The grey one, the default one on Ari's microphone. I have the urge to just like go down there and clean it. Is that weird? Does anyone please tell me someone else has that urge. It's like, Ari, clean your damn microphone. Okay. Chapter 2, which is basically a continuation of chapter 1. We slept for a little. I woke while it was still dark, to hear from beyond the walls the steady tramping of men and horses filing up the mountain track. I called to Manami, and then woke Keide and told her to dress. I would come back for her when it was time to leave. I also entrusted to her the chest that contained Shigeru's records of the tribe. I felt I had to have these protected at all times, a safeguard for my future against the death sentence that the tribe had issued against me, and a possible guarantee of alliance with Arai Daichi, now the most powerful warlord in the 3 countries. The temple was already feverish with activity, the monks preparing not for the dawn prayers, but for a counterattack on the Otori forces, and the possibility of a long siege. Torches sent flickering shadows over the grim faces of men preparing for war. I put on leather armor laced with red and gold. It was the first time I had worn it with a real purpose. It made me feel older, and I hoped it would give me confidence. I went to the gate to watch my men depart as the day broke. Makoto and Kahe had already gone ahead with the vanguard. Plovers and pheasants were calling from the valley. Dew clung to the blades of bamboo grass and to the spring spiders' webs woven between them, webs that were quickly trampled underfoot. When I returned, Keide and Manami were both dressed in men's clothes for riding. Keide wearing the armor made originally for a page that I had picked out for her. I had had a sword forged for her, and she wore this in her belt along with a knife. We quickly ate a little cold food and then returned to where Amano was waiting with the horses. The abbot was with him in helmet and leather cuirass, his sword in his belt. I knelt before him to thank him for all he had done for me. He embraced me like a father. "Send messengers from Maruyama," he said cheerfully. "You will be there before the new moon." His confidence in me heartened me and gave me strength. Keide rode Raku, the grey horse with the black mane and tail that I had given her, and I rode the black stallion we had taken from the Otori warriors, which Amano had called Aoi. Manami and some of the other women who travelled with the army were lifted onto pack horses, Manami making sure the chest of records was strapped behind her. We joined the throng as it wound its way through the forest and up the steep mountain path that Makoto and I had descended the previous year in the first snow. The sky was aflame, the sun just beginning to touch the snowy peaks, turning them pink and gold. The air was cold enough to numb our cheeks and fingers. I looked back once at the temple, at its broad sloping roofs emerging from the sea of new leaves like great ships. It looked eternally peaceful in the morning sun, with white doves fluttering round the eaves. I prayed it would be preserved just as it was at that moment, that it would not be burned or destroyed in the coming fight. The red morning sky was true to its threat. Before long, heavy grey clouds moved in from the west, bringing first showers, then steady rain. As we climbed towards the pass, the rain turned to sleet. Men on horseback did better than the porters, who carried huge baskets on their backs. But as the snow underfoot became deeper, even the horses had a hard time of it. I'd imagined that going into battle would be a heroic affair, the conch shells sounding, the banners flying. I had not imagined it would be this grim slog against no human enemy, just the weather and the mountain, and the aching climb upwards, always upwards. The horses balked finally, and Amano and I dismounted to lead them. By the time we crossed the pass, we were soaked to the skin. There was no room on the narrow track to ride back or ahead to check on my army. As we wound downwards, I could see its snake-like shape, dark against the last traces of snow, a huge many-legged creature. Beyond the rocks and scree, now appearing as the rain melted the snow, stretched deep forests. If anyone lay in wait for us there, we would be completely at their mercy. But the forests were empty. The Otori were waiting for us on the other side of the mountain. Once under the cover of the trees, we caught up with Kahei, where he had stopped to give the vanguard a rest. We now did the same, allowing the men to relieve themselves in small groups and then eat. The damp air filled with the acrid smell of their piss. Ew. We had been marching for 5 or 6 hours, but I was pleased to see warriors and farmers alike had held up well. During our halt, the rain grew heavier. I was worried about Kader after her months of ill health, but even though she seemed very cold, she did not complain. She ate a little, but we had nothing warm and could not waste time making fires. Manami was uncharacteristically silent, watching Kader closely and nervously starting at any sound. We pressed on as soon as possible. By my reckoning, it was afternoon, sometime between the hour of the goat and that of the monkey. The slope became less steep, and soon the track widened a little, enough so that I could ride along it. Leaving Kader with Amano, I urged my horse on and cantered down the slope to the head of the army, where I found Makoto and Kahei. Makoto, who knew the area better than any of us, told me that there was a small town, Kibi, not far ahead, on the other side of the river, where we should stop overnight. Will it be defended? If at all, only by a small garrison. There's no castle, and the town itself is barely fortified. Whose land is it? Arai put one of his constables in, Kahei said. The former lord and his sons sided with the Tohan at Kushimoto. They all died there. Some of the retainers joined Arai, the rest became masterless and took to the mountains as brigands. Send men ahead to say we require shelter for the night. Let them explain that we do not seek battle, we are only passing through. We'll see what the response is. Kahei nodded, called to 3 of his men, and sent them on at a gallop, while we continued more slowly. Barely an hour later they were back. The horses' flanks were heaving, covered in mud to the stifle, their nostrils red and flared. "The river is in full flood, and the bridge is down," their leader reported. "We tried to swim across, but the current is too strong. Even if we had made it, the foot soldiers and pack horses never would." "What about roads along the river? Where's the next bridge?" "The eastern road leads through the valley, back to Yamagata, straight back to the Otori." Oh, that's Makoto. Makoto said. "The southern one leads away from the river, over the range, towards Inuyama. But the pass will not be open at this time of year." Unless we could cross the river, we were trapped. "Ride forward with me," I said to Makoto. "Let's take a look for ourselves." I told Kahei to bring the rest of the army forward slowly, except for the rear guard of 100 men, who were to strike out to the east in case we were already being pursued by that route. Makoto and I had hardly gone half a mile before I could hear it, the steady sullen groan of a river in flood. Swollen by the melting snow, as inexorable as the season, the spring river poured its yellow-green water across the landscape. As we rode out of the forest through the bamboo groves and into the reed beds, I thought we had come to the sea itself. Water stretched before us as far as the eye could see, dappled by rain, the same color as the sky. I must have gasped because Makoto said, "It's not as bad as it looks. Most of it is irrigated fields." I saw then the squared pattern of dikes and paths. The rice fields would be boggy but shallow. However, through the middle of them ran the river itself. It was about 100 feet wide and had risen over the protective dikes, making it at least 12 feet deep. I could see the remains of the wooden bridge, 2 piers just showing their dark tops against the swirling water. They looked unspeakably forlorn beneath the drifting rain, like all men's dreams and ambitions laid waste by nature and time. I was gazing at the river, wondering if we could swim across, reconstruct the bridge, or what in heaven's name, when above the steady roar of the water I heard the sounds of human activity. Focusing my attention, I thought I could recognize voices. The chink of an axe, then, unmistakably, the sudden crash of falling timber. To my right, upstream, the river curved away around the bend, the forest growing closer to the banks. I could see the remnants of what might have been a jetty or loading dock, presumably for taking lumber from the forest to the town. I turned my horse's head and at once began to ride through the fields towards the bend. "What is it?" Makoto called, following me. "There's someone there." I grabbed at Aoi's mane as he slipped and almost lost his footing. "Come back," he shouted. "It's not safe. You can't go alone." I heard him unsling his bow and fit an arrow to the cord. The horses plunged and splashed through the shallow water. Some memory was stringing itself together in my mind, of another river, impassable for different reasons. I knew whom I would find. Joanne was there, half naked, soaking wet, with his 30 or more outcasts. They had taken lumber from the jetty, where it had been stranded by the flood, and had felled more trees and cut enough reeds to build one of their floating bridges. They stopped work when they saw me and began to kneel in the mud. I thought I recognized some of them from the tannery. They were as thin and wretched as ever, and their eyes burnt with the same hungry light. I tried to imagine what it had cost them to abscond with Joanne out of their own territory, to break all the laws against the felling of trees, on the faint promise that I would bring justice and peace. I did not want to think about the ways they would be made to suffer if I failed them. "Joanne," I called, and he came to the horse's side. It snorted at him and tried to rear, but he took the bridle and calmed it. No pressure though, yeah. Tell them to keep working, I said, adding, "So I am even further in your debt." "You owe me nothing," he replied. "You owe God everything." Makoto rode up alongside, and I found myself hoping he had not heard Joanne's words. Our horses touched noses, and the black stallion squealed and tried to bite the other. Joanne smacked it on the neck. Makoto's glance fell on him. "Outcasts," he said, disbelieving. "What are they doing here?" "Saving our lives. They're building a floating bridge." He pulled his horse back a few steps. Beneath his helmet I could see the curl of his lips. "No one will use it," he began, but I cut him off. "They will, because I command it. This is our only way of escape." We could fight our way back to the bridge at Yamagata and lose all our advantage of speed. Anyway, we would be outnumbered 5-1, and we'd have no retreat route. I won't do that. We'll cross the river by the bridge, go back to the men, and bring many of them to work with the outcasts. Let the rest prepare for the crossing. "No one will cross this bridge if it is built by outcasts," he said, and something in his voice, as if he were speaking to a child, enraged me. It was the same feeling I'd had months ago when Shigeru's guards had let Kenji into the garden at Hagi, fooled by his tricks, unaware that he was a master assassin from the tribe. I could only protect my men if they obeyed me. I forgot Makoto was older, wiser, and more experienced than I was. I let the fury sweep over me. "Do as I command you at once. You must persuade them, or you'll answer to me for it. Let the warriors act as guards, while the pack horses and foot soldiers cross. Bring bowmen to cover the bridge. We will cross before nightfall." "Lord Otori." He bowed his head, and his horse plunged and splashed away over the rice fields and up the slope beyond. I watched him disappear between the shafts of bamboo, then turned my attention to the outcasts' work. They were lashing together the lumber they had collected and the trunks they had felled into rafts, each one supported on piles of reeds, tied into bundles with cords plaited from tree bark and hemp. As each raft was finished, they floated it out into the water and lashed it to the ones already moored in place. But the force of the current kept the rafts pushed into the bank. "It needs to be anchored to the farther side," I said to Joanne. "Someone will swim across," he replied. One of the younger men took a roll of cord, tied it round his waist and plunged into the river. but the current was far too strong for him. We saw his arms flailing above the surface, then he disappeared under the yellow water. He was hauled back, half drowned. "Give the rope to me," I said. Joanne looked anxiously down the bank. "No, Lord, wait," he begged me. "When the men come, one of them can swim across." "When the men come, the bridge must be ready," I retorted. "Give me the rope." Joanne untied it from the young man, who was sitting up now, spitting out water, and handed it up to me. I made it fast around my waist and urged my horse forward. The rope slid over his haunches, making him leap. He was in the water almost before he realized it. I shouted at him to encourage him, and he put one ear back to listen to me. For the first few paces his feet were on the bottom. Then the water came up to his shoulder, and he began to swim. I tried to keep his head turned towards where I hoped we would land, but strong and willing as he was, the current was stronger, and we were carried by it downstream towards the remains of the old bridge. I glanced towards it and did not like what I saw. The current was hurling branches and other debris against the piles, and if my horse were to be caught among them, he would panic and drown us both. I felt and feared the power of the river. So did he. Both ears lay flat against his head, and his eyes rolled. Luckily, his terror gave him extra strength. He put in one great exertion, striking out with all 4 feet. We cleared the piles by a couple of armspans, and suddenly the current slackened. We were past the middle. A few moments later, the horse found his footing and began to plunge up and down, taking huge steps to try and clear the water. He scrambled up onto the firm ground and stood, head lowered, sides heaving, his former exuberance completely extinguished. I slipped from his back and patted his neck, telling him his father must have been a water spirit for him to swim so well. We were both saturated, more like fish or frogs than land animals. I could feel the pull of the cord around my waist and dreaded it taking me back into the water. I half crawled, half scrambled to a small grove of trees at the edge of the river. They stood around a tiny shrine dedicated to the fox god, judging by the white statues, and were submerged to their lower branches by the flood. It lapped at the feet of the statues, making the foxes look as if they floated. I passed the cord around the trunk of the nearest tree, a small maple just beginning to burst into leaf, and started to haul on it. It was attached to a much stronger rope. I could feel its sodden weight as it came reluctantly up out of the river. Once I had enough length on it, I secured it to another, larger tree. It occurred to me that I was probably going to pollute the shrine in some way, but at that moment I did not care what god, spirit, or demon I offended, as long as I got my men safely across the river. All the time, I was listening. Despite the rain, I couldn't believe this place was as deserted as it seemed. It was at the site of a bridge on what appeared to be a well-used road. Through the hiss of the rain and the roar of the river, I could hear the mewing of kites, the croaking of hundreds of frogs, enthusiastic about the wet, and crows calling harshly from the forest. But where were all the people? Once the rope was secure, about 10 outcasts crossed the river holding onto it. Far more skilled than I, they redid all my knots and set up a pulley system using the smooth branches of the maple. Slowly, laboriously, they hauled on the rafts, their chests heaving their muscles standing out like cords. The river tore at the rafts, resenting their intrusion into its domain, but the men persisted, and the rafts, made buoyant and stable by their reed mattresses, responded like oxen and came, inch by inch, towards us. Leave it to the experts. One side of the floating bridge was jammed by the current against the existing piles. Otherwise, I think the river would have defeated us. I could see the bridge was close to being finished, but there was no sign of Makoto returning with the warriors. I had lost all sense of time, and the clouds were too low and dark to be able to discern the position of the sun, but I thought at least an hour must have passed. Had Makoto not been able to persuade them? Had they turned back to Yamagata, as he had suggested? Closest friend or not, I would kill him with my own hands if they had. I strained my ears but could hear nothing except the river, the rain, and the frogs. Good leader delegate sufficiently? Yeah. Beyond the shrine where I stood, the road emerged from the water. I could see the mountains behind it, white mist hanging like streamers to their slopes. My horse was shivering. I thought I should move him around a little to keep him warm, since I had no idea how I would ever get him dry. I mounted and went a little way along the road, thinking also that I might get a better view across the river from the higher ground. Not far along stood a kind of hovel built from wood and daub, and roughly thatched with reeds. A wooden barrier had been placed across the road beside it. I wondered what it was. It did not look like an official fief border post, and there did not seem to be any guards. As I came closer, I saw that several human heads were attached to the barrier, some freshly killed, others no more than skulls. I'd barely had time to feel revulsion when, from behind me, my ears caught the sound I'd been waiting for, the tramping of horses and men from the other side of the river. I looked back and saw through the rain of the vanguard of my army emerging from the forest and splashing towards the bridge. I recognized Kahei by his helmet. He was riding in front, Makoto alongside him. My chest lightened with relief. I turned Aoi back. He saw the distant shapes of his fellows and gave a loud neigh. This was echoed at once by a tremendous shout from inside the hovel. The ground shook as the door was thrown open, and the largest man I'd ever seen, larger even than the charcoal burner's giant, stepped out. My first thought that he was an ogre or a demon. He was nearly 2 arm-spans tall and as broad as an ox, yet, despite his bulk, his head seemed far too large, as if the skull bone had never stopped growing. His hair was long and matted. He had a thick, wiry moustache and beard, and his eyes were not human-shaped but round, like an animal's. He only had one ear, massive and pendulous. Where the other ear had been, a blue-grey scar gleamed through his hair. But his speech when he shouted at me was human enough. "Hey!" he yelled in his enormous voice. "What do you think you're doing on my road?" "I am Otori Takeo," I replied. "I am bringing my army through. Clear the barrier." He laughed. It was like the sound of rocks crashing down the side of a mountain. "No one comes through here unless Jin Nimon says they can. Go back and tell your army that." The rain was falling more heavily. The day was rapidly losing its light. I was exhausted, hungry, wet, and cold. "Clear the road," I shouted impatiently. "We are coming through." He strode towards me without answering. He was carrying a weapon. But he held it behind his back, so I could not see clearly what it was. I heard the sound before I saw his arm move, a sort of metallic clink. With one hand I swung the horse's head around, with the other I drew Chateau. Aoi heard the sound too and saw the giant's arm lunge outwards. He shied sideways, and the ogre's stick and chain went past my ears, howling like a wolf. The chain was weighted at one end, and the stick to which the other end was attached had a sickle set in it. I'd never encountered such a weapon before, and had no idea how to fight him. The chain swung again, catching the horse round the right hind leg. Aoi screamed in pain and fear and lashed out. I kicked my feet from the stirrups, slid down on the opposite side from the ogre, and turned to face him. I'd obviously fallen in with a madman who was going to kill me if I did not kill him first. He grinned at me. To him, I must have looked no larger than the Peach Boy or some other tiny character from a folk tale. Quit hurting the forelegs? Yeah. I caught the beginning of movement in his muscle and split my image, throwing myself to the left. The chain went harmlessly through my second self. Yato leapt through the air between us and sank its blade into his lower arm, just above the wrist. Ordinarily, it would have taken off the hand, but this adversary had bones of stone. I felt the reverberations up into my shoulder, and for a moment I feared my sword would lodge in his arm like an axe in a tree. Jinnamon made a kind of creaking groan, not unlike the sound of the mountain when it freezes, and transferred the stick to his other hand. Blood was now oozing from his right hand, dark blackish red in colour, not splashing as you would expect. I went invisible for a moment as the chain howled again, briefly considered retreating to the river, wondering where on earth all my men were when I needed them. Then I saw an unprotected space and thrust Chateau up into it and into the flesh that lay there. The wound left by my sword was huge, but again he hardly bled. A fresh wave of horror swept through me. I was fighting something non-human, supernatural. Did I have any chance of overcoming it? On the next swing, the chain wrapped itself round my sword. Giving a shout of triumph, Jinnamon yanked it from my hands. Chateau flew through the air and landed several feet away from me. The ogre approached me, making sweeping movements with his arms, wise to my tricks now. I stood still. I had my knife in my belt. Too much meat, Kitty. But I did not want to draw it in case he swung his chain and ended my life there and then. I wanted this monster to look at me. He came up to me, seized me by the shoulders and lifted me from the ground. I don't know what his plan was, maybe to tear out my throat with his huge teeth and drink my blood. I thought, he is not my son. He cannot kill me, and stared into his eyes. They had no more expression than a beast's, but as they met mine, I saw them round with astonishment. I sensed behind them his dull malevolence, his brutal and pitiless nature. I realized the power that lay within me and let it stream from me. His eyes began to cloud. He gave a low moan, and his grasp slackened as he wavered and crashed to the ground like a great tree under the woodsman's axe. I threw myself sideways, not wanting to end up pinned underneath him, and rolled to where Jateau lay, making Aoi, who had been circling nervously around us, prance and rear again. Sword in hand, I ran back to where Jinnemon had fallen. He was snoring in the deep Kikuta sleep. I tried to raise the huge head to cut it off, but its weight was too great, and I did not want to risk damaging the blade of my sword. Instead, I thrust Jateau into his throat and cut open the artery and windpipe. Even here the blood ran sluggishly. His heels kicked, his back arched, but he did not waken. Eventually, his breathing stopped. I'd thought he was alone, but then a sound came from the hovel, and I turned to see a much smaller man scuttling from the door. He shouted something incoherent, bounded across the dike behind the hut, and disappeared into the forest. I shifted the barrier myself, gazing on the skulls and wondering whose they were. 2 of the older ones fell while I was moving the wood, and insects crawled out from their eye sockets. I placed them in the grass and went back to my horse, chilled and nauseated. Aoi's leg was bruised and bleeding from where the chain had caught it, although it did not appear to be broken. He could walk, but he was very lame. I led him back to the river. The encounter seemed like a bad dream, but the more I pondered it, the better I felt. Jinnemon should have killed me. My severed head should now be on the barrier along with the others, but my tribe powers had delivered me from him. It seemed to confirm the prophecy completely. If such an ogre could not kill me, who could? By the time I got back to the river, new energy was flowing through me. However, what I saw there transformed it into rage. The bridge was in place, but only the outcasts were on the nearer side. The rest of my army was still on the other bank. The outcasts were huddled in that sullen way of theirs that I was beginning to understand as their reaction to the irrationality of the world's contempt for them. Joanne was sitting on his haunches, gazing gloomily at the swirling water. He stood when he saw me. "They won't cross, Lord. You'll have to go and order them." "I will," I said, my anger mounting. "Take the horse, wash the wound and walk him round so he doesn't chill." Joanne took the reins. "What happened?" "I had an encounter with a demon," I replied shortly, and stepped onto the bridge. The men waiting on the opposite side gave a shout when they saw me, but not one of them ventured onto the other end of the bridge. It was not easy to walk on, a swaying mass, partly submerged at times, pulled and rocked by the river. I half ran, thinking as I did so of the nightingale floor that I had run across so lightly in Hagi. I prayed to Shigeru's spirit to be with me. On the other side, Makoto dismounted and grasped my arm. "Where were you? We feared you were dead." "I might well have been," I said in fury. "Where were you?" Before he could answer, Kahei rode up to us. "What's the delay for?" I demanded. "Get the men moving." Kahei hesitated. They fear pollution from the outcasts. Get down, I said, and as he slid from his horse's back, I let them both feel the full force of my rage. Because of your stupidity, I nearly died. If I give an order, it must be obeyed at once, no matter what you think of it. If that doesn't suit you, then ride back now to Hagi, to the temple, to wherever, but out of my sight. I spoke in a low voice, not wanting the whole army to hear me, but I saw how my words shamed them. Now, send those with horses who want to swim into the water first. Move the pack horses onto the bridge while the rear is guarded. Then the foot soldiers, no more than 30 at a time. Damn, Skippy, yeah. Lord Otori, Kahei said. He leapt back into the saddle and galloped off down the line. Forgive me, Takeo, Makoto said quietly. Next time I'll kill you, I said. Give me your horse. I rode along the lines of waiting soldiers, repeating the command. Don't be afraid of pollution, I told them. I have already crossed the bridge. If there is any pollution, let it fall on me. I had moved into a state that was almost exalted. I did not think anything in heaven or earth could harm me. With a mighty shout, the first warrior rode into the water, and the others streamed after him. The first horses were led onto the bridge, and to my relief, it held them safely. Once the crossing was underway, I rode back along the line, issuing commands and reassuring the foot soldiers, until I came to where Keide was waiting with Manami and the other women who accompanied us. Here we go. Manami had brought rain umbrellas, and they stood huddled beneath them. Amano held the horses alongside them. Keide's face lit up when she saw me. Her hair was glistening with rain, and drops clung to her eyelashes. I dismounted and gave the reins to Amano. What happened to Aoi? He asked, recognizing this horse as Makoto's. He's hurt. I don't know how badly. He's on the other side of the river. We swam across. I wanted to tell Amano how brave the horse had been, but there was no time now. We are going to cross the river, I told the women. The outcasts built a bridge. Keide said nothing, watching me, but Manami immediately opened her mouth to complain. I put up my hand to silence her. There is no alternative. You are to do what I say. I repeated what I had told the men, that any pollution would fall on me alone. Lord Otori, she muttered, giving the minimum bob of her head and glancing out the corner of her eye. I resisted the urge to strike her, though I felt she deserved it. Christ, Takeo. Get a little bit of power and suddenly just slap people around. Am I to ride? Keide said. No, it's very unstable. Better to walk. I'll swim your horse across. Amano would not hear of it. There are plenty of grooms to do that, he said, looking at my soaked, muddy armour. Let one of them come with me now, I said. He can take Raku and bring an extra horse for me. I must get back to the other side. I had not forgotten the man I'd seen scuttling away. If he had gone to alert others of our arrival, I wanted to be there to confront them. Bring Shun for Lord Otori, Amano shouted to one of the grooms. The man came up to us on a small bay horse and took Raku's reins. I said a brief farewell to Keide, asking her to make sure the pack horse carrying the chest of records made the crossing safely, and mounted Makoto's horse again. We cantered back along the line of soldiers, which was now moving quite quickly onto the bridge. About 200 were already across, and Kahei was organizing them into small groups, each with its own leader. Makoto was waiting for me by the water's edge. I gave him his horseback and held Raku while he and the groom rode into the river. I watched the bay horse, Shun. He went fearlessly into the water, swimming strongly and calmly, as if it were the sort of thing he did every day. The groom returned over the bridge and took Raku from me. While they swam across, I joined the men on the floating bridge. They scrambled across like the rats in Hagi Harbour, spending as little time on the soggy mass as possible. I imagined few of them knew how to swim. Some of them greeted me, and one or two of them touched me on the shoulder, as if I would ward off evil and bring good luck. I encouraged them as much as I could, joking about the hot baths and excellent food we get in Maruyama. They seemed in good spirits, though we all knew that Maruyama lay a long way ahead. On the other side, I told the groom to wait with Raku for Keide. I mounted Shun. He was on the small side, and not a handsome horse, but there was something about him I liked. Telling the warriors to follow, I rode ahead with Makoto. I particularly wanted bowmen with us, and 2 groups of 30 were ready. I told them to conceal themselves behind the dike and wait for my signal. Jinnamon's body still lay by the barrier, and the whole place was silent, apparently deserted. "Was this something to do with you?" Makoto said, looking with disgust at the huge body and the display of heads. "I'll tell you later. He had a companion who got away. I suspect he'll be back with more men. Kahei said this area was full of bandits. The dead man must have been making people pay to use the bridge. If they refused, he took their heads." Makoto dismounted to take a closer look. "Some of these are warriors," he said, "and young men too. We should take his head in payment." He drew his sword. "Don't," I warned. "He has bones of granite. You'll damage the blade." He gave me an incredulous look and did not say anything, but in one swift movement slashed across the neck. His sword snapped with an almost human sound. There were gasps of astonishment and dread from the men around us. Makoto gazed at the broken blade in dismay, then looked shamefaced at me. "Forgive me," he said again. "I should have listened to you." It was at that moment he knew he'd fucked up. My rage ignited. I drew my own sword, my vision turning red in the old familiar way. How could I protect my men if they did not obey me? Makoto had ignored my advice in front of these soldiers. He deserved to die for it. I almost lost control and cut him down where he stood. But at that moment I heard the sound of horses' hooves in the distance, reminding me that I had other, real enemies. He was a demon, less than human, I said to Makoto. You had no way of knowing. You'll have to fight using your bow. I made a sign to the men around us to be silent. They stood as if turned to stone, not even the horses moved. The rain had lessened to a fine drizzle. In the fading, misty light, it looked like an army of ghosts. I listened to the bandits' approach, splashing through the wet landscape, and then they appeared out of the mist, over 30 horsemen, and as many on foot. They were a motley, ragged band, some obviously masterless warriors with good horses and what had once been fine armour. Others the riff-raff left behind after 10 years of war. Escapees from harsh masters on estates or in silver mines, thieves, lunatics, murderers. I recognized the man who'd fled from the hovel. He was running at the stirrup of the leading horse. As the band came to a halt, throwing up mud and spray, he pointed to me and screamed, again something unintelligible. The rider called, "Who is it who murdered our friend and companion, Jinemon?" I answered, "I am to Otori Takeo. I am leading my men to Maruyama. Jinemon attacked me for no reason. He paid for it. Let us through, or you will pay the same price." "Go back to where you came from," he replied with a snarl. "We hate the Otori here." The men around him jeered. He spat on the ground and swung his sword above his head. I raised my hand in signal to the bowman. Immediately, the sound of arrows filled the air. It is a fearful noise, the hiss and clack of the shafts, the dull thunk as they hit living flesh, the screams of the wounded. But I had no time to reflect on it then, for the leader urged his horse forward and galloped towards me, his sword arm stretched above his head. His horse was bigger than Shun, and his reach longer than mine. Shun's ears were forward, his eyes calm. Just before the bandit struck, my horse made a leap to the side and turned almost in mid-air, so I could slash my adversary from behind, opening up his neck and shoulder as he hit out vainly at where I had been. He was no demon or ogre, but all too human. His human blood spurted red. His horse galloped on while he swayed in the saddle, and then he fell suddenly sideways to the ground. Shun, meanwhile, still completely calm, had spun back to meet the next attacker. This man had no helmet, and Jato split his head in two, spattering blood, brains, and bone. The smell of blood was all around us, mixed with rain and mud. As more and more of our warriors came up to join the fray, the bandits were completely overwhelmed. Those who still lived tried to flee, but we rode after them and cut them down. Rage had been rising steadily in me all day, and had been set alight by Makoto's disobedience. It found its release in this brief, bloody skirmish. I was furious at the delay that these lawless, foolish men had caused us, and I was deeply satisfied that they had all paid for it. It was not much of a battle, but we won it decisively, giving ourselves a taste of blood and victory. How much have we got to go? Probably too much, I'm afraid, chat. I might have to leave it halfway through the chapter there. That is a solid 2 hours of reading.